Hello all of you. Welcome to our today's session of Global GEG. So what is Global GEG? While you're waiting and listening to my conversation, feel free to put in your Twitter handles, the city where you are from, and please connect with all the educators that are joining in. So Global GEG is a team of global educators who are voluntarily giving up their time and who help inspire educational communities and make the world a smaller and a better place. That is just our attempt. Google Educator groups bring together educators from all over the world to learn, share, inspire, and empower each other. So my name is Reshma Honap. I am a Google certified trainer, a GEG Pune and Maharashtra founder and leader, and a co-leader at Global GEG. So welcome all of you again. And today is a very, very exciting session. I'm really glad to have awesome educators with us who are going to help us experience and help us learn about game-based learning. So let me call up upon stage Anurati and Vignesh. Hi, Anurati.
Hi, Reshma.
Hi, Vignesh.
Hi, Reshma.
How are you?
You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, very excited for this session.
Yes, and we are excited too. So Anurati and Vignesh, please introduce yourself and we will start the session soon. I will be backstage. Just give me a shout out whenever you need. And all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reshma. I am Anurati and I'm truly very excited to be here today and to be a part of this wonderful community of Google educators. I hope that all of you are staying safe, sane and healthy. And I am from UNESCO MGIEP, where I work at the Games for Learning team. I'm a learning experience designer and I design learning experiences that help learners develop social and emotional learning skills, also called SEL. We will be hearing this word SEL pretty often in the course of this conversation. And what I primarily do is use storytelling, visual narratives, games, interactive activities, and instructional design to make online learning fun and engaging. I have been working in the space of education, design, and technology for about 4 years now. And yes, I can't wait to get started and share about some of the projects that we are doing here at MGIP. I am joined by my colleague Vignesh. And Vignesh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Anurati. It's a pleasure to be here in this community of Games for Learning educators and GEG. My name is Vignesh, and I'm a digital pedagogy developer who works on Games for Learning at UNESCO MGIEP. I've been a research fellow in physics for 4 years before I switched to education. And now I use my multidisciplinary background to leverage the best of technology to design innovative solutions to teach social emotional learning and critical thinking. I'm excited to share with you what we've been up to these past months. The Educators Toolkit is one of our latest courses, and I hope you learn as much as we anticipate. Back to you, Anurati.
Thank you, Vignesh. So before we get started, we would like to talk a little bit about MGIEP. So UNESCO MGIEP is the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. It is UNESCO's first Category 1 research institute in the Asia Pacific region, located in the city of New Delhi. Of course, right now we're all working from home and working remotely. We work on the UN Sustainable Development Goal Target 4.7, which focuses on education for building peaceful and sustainable societies across the world. Our mandate is to mainstream social emotional learning in education through digital pedagogies. One of the approaches that we use is through digital video games. Our focus is on integrating video games with digital pedagogies to create learning modules that build SEL skills. The purpose of this workshop is to share a course that we've designed, the Educators Toolkit, which enables educators to design courses using digital games for learning, especially for SEL in the classroom. So today's session will be for about an hour and has been divided into 4 sections as you see on screen. We first begin with talking about play, the philosophy of play, the components of play. Vignesh will be doing a short activity on play, then an introduction to SEL within the context of video games, of commercially available games. And finally, the process of creating game-based curricula, the secret sauce behind creating game-based courses. With that, I will let Vignesh talk about the use of play for learning. Over to you, Vignesh.
Thank you. So, undoubtedly, most of you must have observed the offsprings of many mammals engage in play. Now, here I'd like you to take a moment and uh, ponder upon this question. What exactly is the purpose of play according to you? Is it an evolutionary accident? Why did natural selection promote such a behavior that's seemingly purposeless? So, over the past several decades, this question has attracted the attention of many philosophers and researchers, particularly from the fields of child development and psychology. And there are many risks associated with play. Um, so, play has energy costs. Anurati, can we have the next slide? So it's energy intensive. Any mammal that engages in play is choosing to use energy that could be used for other survival activities. So apart from that, play is also noisy and it might attract the attention of predators, which is something you don't want. And anyone who engages in play takes the risk of sustaining an injury, which leaves the individual vulnerable as well as your herd or community. So there must be some benefits of play that outweigh these risks, right? And there are a few that I'd like to highlight here. It helps us practice survival skills, certain essential skills that are critical for survival and reproduction and general well-being. It helps us learn to cope emotionally and physically to a diverse set of situations. And by allowing us to interact and experiment with our surroundings and with the objects in our surroundings, it helps you generate useful creations. It's a pretty encouraging activity to breed creativity. And most importantly of all, it enables cooperation between individuals. So the benefits of play sort of outweigh the risks, and that is why you see play being passed on from generation to generation as a feature. So here we'll take a few minutes, 3 minutes, to do a short activity. What we'd like to highlight here is we'd like you to think about your experiences of playing. Think of some of your old childhood memories, or if you can't remember them, think of the last time you engaged in a game and what were some of the memories you carry from that experience. And more importantly, what were some of the emotions you experienced as you played those games? We've created a Padlet for you. If you go to bit.ly/play-activity, you'll see 2 columns, and each column there's a header with a question. If you'd like, you can enter your response under each column. And while you do that, I will share one of my own experiences from my childhood. When my parents first bought me a computer, I was hooked onto video games, and one of the games that really stuck on with me was this game where you had to create and manage an amusement park. So you could there was an element of management and there was creativity where you had to design these roller coasters. And I remember spending hours trying to get the perfect design for the roller coaster that's fun for all the visitors, while also being really cheap to maintain with very few breakdowns. And the more you engage with it, the more I was motivated by just trying to hit this sweet spot. It's about 20 years old, more than 20 years old now, but that's one of the games that really stuck with me. Do you want to share something, Anurati, about your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, I think playing for me was mostly on a blank canvas because the internet was so new in those days. So just using even just the fact just using MS Paint to create these intricate digital paintings online that nobody has asked me to do. I also started editing and creating videos. So when I was 9 or 8, I had my own YouTube channel, which I was very, very proud of, making fan videos. And I was completely hooked onto it. And although I didn't realize at that time, I did learn a lot of digital creative skills that, of course, they are much more prevalent now, but back then it was fairly new. Yeah, and I think back on the Padlet, I'm just checking out our
Yeah.
Padlet wall. There are quite a few responses there.
Yeah, I'd like to highlight a few actually. There are some people, well, thank you so much for interacting. This is one of the things you were worried about since it's a live session. We weren't sure about the activity, but this is very encouraging. And we see that a lot of people have mentioned happiness, a sense of learning from the game itself. And I like this one personally, which says allows us to fail and learn from failure. And oh, this is there's something else that was highlighted as a precursor to learning. So can you have the next slide, Amrati? I'd like to go over some of the things that I'm pretty
Sure.
glad that everyone's sort of echoing what I had in mind. um, Games and play have this sort of interesting relationship with the biochemistry of the brain. So the nature of play is such that you're motivated by the promise of mastering the game itself, right? Within the constraints of the game, every time you try, you gain the skills that are required to get better at the game, and this just keeps you engaged in the game. And when you beat the game or you solve a problem within the game, you get a tiny hit of dopamine in your brain, and the reward system gets activated, and you're hooked onto this loop of problem solving. And my favorite, as someone else also highlighted, was failure is considered to be not as penalizing as it is in our schooling system. Failure is considered as a step to learning, and every time you fail, it's one more way to sort of get better at it. Anuruti, do you want to share the Padlet wall just so everyone can um,
Yes,
see
it's
it?
being shared on the chat. Yeah, I put it here.
Okay. So these innate features, these behavioral mechanisms exist within us as a means to learn and acquire new knowledge. But we need to find innovative ways to actually leverage this innate mechanism and create learning environments that use these features to assist students and learners to learn better. So we'll proceed now with something about social emotional learning. Over to you, Anuruti.
Thank you, Vignesh. So I would like to pose a very simple question to all of you. So, what are some of the key qualities that you would like your learners to imbibe? As a parent or as a teacher, what are some of the intentions or wishes that you hold for your children that they carry on throughout their lives? Please type your answers here in the chat. I will give you a minute to think about the intentions that you hold for the future generation. So, I would like my students or children to be more XYZ. And you can fill in with adjectives that you feel are important. Okay, I see problem solving skills. I see lifelong learner. I see good learning outcomes. A free thinker. Creativity. I think people are echoing that here. Honesty. Sensitive, curious, resilient. I've Bhavya says that I would like my students to learn to be able to identify and label their emotions, be aware of their own as well as their own emotions, as well as others' emotions. Okay. So, yes, critical thinking, kindness, Um, that's great. Positive thinking, human values. It's wonderful that educators have such amazing intentions, and this is not the first time that we're actually hearing of these responses. So back, last year also we have posed the same question in workshops that we have conducted, and you see some of the answers here on screen, and they resonate what all of you are typing down in the chat as well. Most educators, parents, and caregivers are united by the wish that they want their child to be happy, kind, caring, resilient, confident in the long run. The kind of social interactions we have with people, the way we learn, how motivated we are when we fail, how resilient are we in the times of crisis, how kind and caring we are towards ourselves and towards others, whether it's our own team, our students, our family, is all determined by our SEL skills. Sadly, most of our formal education leaves us highly unequipped to handle our own emotions. And time and again, we're reminded that beyond our ability to merely remember facts and memorize dates, these are the abilities that help us lead more meaningful lives, to help us be leaders and problem solvers in a way that is empathetic, kind, and compassionate. So, with that, let's So with that, let's watch a short clip where Dr. Nandini Chatterjee Singh, a neuroscientist who heads the Rethinking Learning team at UNESCO MGIEP, talks about the social network of the brain. Can such SEL skills be taught? What is the science behind all of this? So let me put on that video.
Humans are social beings and social relationships are confirm the existence of a social network in the brain comprising of.
Is it audible, Vignesh?
Yeah, it's audible now.
Okay, so maybe I can restart it now. Okay.
Humans are social beings and social relationships are critical to human existence.
It stopped. I think it paused. I think when you mute yourself, we lose the voice of the video as well.
Comprising of the.
Okay, so could you hear the last few milliseconds?
No.
Okay, let me restart.
Humans are social beings and social relationships are critical to human existence, not just to feel happy and connected, but also to feel secure and motivated. Recent advances from the neurosciences have confirmed the existence of a social network in the brain comprising of the amygdala, regions of the prefrontal cortex, the temporal cortex, and the cingulate cortex. Okay. The figure shows the amygdala, which is part of the limbic or the emotional system of the brain, which plays an important role in processing emotions. So the amygdala is sitting here. The intraparietal sulcus, okay, which is sitting here, okay, plays an important role. So does the temporoparietal junction in TPJ. The inferior frontal gyrus, which is sitting here, it's also known as Broca's area. The middle prefrontal cortex, which you see on the left over here in orange. And these are all part of the mirror neuron system of the brain. And the mirror neuron system of the brain is involved in mentalizing, that is, understanding the intent of others. The anterior insula, which is indicated here in AI, this region, is important also for processing the emotions of others, be it happiness or pain or disgust, while the anterior cingulate cortex plays an important role in conflict management. And clearly, all these are processes that we use in relationship management and in life every day. Now, the existence of the mirror neuron system in humans arises from the observation that the same brain areas are activated when we observe another person performing the same action. And that's why they're called mirror neurons. So imagine you watch somebody eating a bar of chocolate or your favorite ice cream, and you begin to salivate. So you're watching somebody, but you can begin to feel your mouth water. That's because you can imagine or mentalize the pleasure that person is getting, and you're participating in that action. This ability of being able to mentalize is seen in primates and in humans. But it plays a very important role in humans because it allows us to also imagine the mental state of the person you are interacting with. And once you're able to understand the mental state of the person, you are able to make predictions about how that person is going to behave next. Okay? This ability to predict the mental state of the person on how he or she will behave next is critical to managing human relationships. So this plays an important role, and you can clearly see, therefore, the need to understand emotions. Okay? So you read these mental states because of the emotional states that we process. Okay? So if I'm smiling when I'm speaking, it's because you can begin to feel that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And if you begin to smile when I'm speaking, I begin to get the feeling that you are enjoying what you are listening to. And therefore, emotional literacy becomes a very important part of social and emotional learning. Thus, the mirror neuron system also enables us to share the experiences of others. And what's been really exciting over the last few years has been that we now know that the ability to develop emotional literacy can be taught in the classroom, just like you can teach children literacy and numeracy. But you must also realize that another thing that we need to teach our children is self awareness, to recognize the states of our own selves as and when they are occurring, because we know this self awareness influences others too. So, the better we become at self awareness and at predicting intent, the better we will be at managing social relationships and our social interactions. If we begin to thrive at them, life will become so much more fuller, happier, and enjoyable. And that's what we want our children to do, to thrive in life.
So that was Dr. Nandini Chatterjee saying, and a life where we thrive and not just survive. And that is the aim of social emotional learning. And SEL can primarily be described as learning that equips all learners to identify and navigate their emotions, practice mindful engagement, and exhibit pro-social behavior for human flourishing towards a peaceful and sustainable planet. Let me move on to the next slide.
Humans are social.
Yes. So MGIEP's SCL framework is called ESC Square. According to us, we have identified the 4 key SCL competencies, which are A, empathy for the fellow human being, 2, mindfulness for the task at hand, 3, compassion for pro-social action and behavior, and lastly, critical inquiry, to question and critically think about the decisions that we make. So we will talk about each of the 4 competencies in detail within the context of a commercially available video game and how games can be used to inculcate each of these 4 competencies. So first we come to empathy. So empathy is the ability to walk in someone else's shoes and understand how someone else is feeling. The first-hand nature of games and their inherent agency helps us literally experience the life of someone other than ourselves and puts empathy directly into action. One of the games that does this really well is Bury Me My Love, which you see on screen right now. The game makes you play as the husband of a Syrian refugee who is leaving and fleeing the country. In the game, your task is to communicate with your partner in a time of crisis and ensure her safety, all the while managing your own emotions and managing your own feelings of helplessness. The second competency is mindfulness. I think within the wake of the pandemic, that is something that most of the people around the world are trying to inculcate. Mindfulness is the ability to be present in the moment, acknowledge all our thoughts without judgment. A very popular game called Tetris helps us do just that. In fact, researchers are studying the flow state experience when playing this game. This flow state effect is being called the Tetris effect, a state of mind where you're so engaged that the rest of the world falls away and time passes by more quickly. It can be achieved by concentrating on a single simple activity, and it happens when the game mechanics are at the perfect threshold. So, if the activity isn't challenging enough, you will get bored. If it is too difficult, you get frustrated. There are quite a few games that can be used for mindfulness apart from Tetris. A lot of upcoming popular games on mobile phones, which include games that focus on idle cultivation, where you say cultivate a plant or look after a pet, or other puzzle based games and art therapy games that help us come into a state of mindfulness. So now I'm going to talk about compassion and critical inquiry and how a single game can be used to inculcate both of these SEL skills. So compassion is a concern for others combined with the desire to alleviate the pain of someone else. So it is in a way the willingness to show kindness, and it goes takes a step further from empathy by the fact that not only just you feel for the person, but you are motivated enough to help the other person. Critical inquiry, which is the ability to think clearly and rationally and to identify, analyze, and find ways to solve problems. Um, and a lot of critical inquiry is based on the competencies that we acquired before that. For, for example, the skills of perspective taking, which come in handy when we use critical inquiry. So let's look at one such game that can be used to teach both the competencies. The game is called GRIE, which is French for grey. And GRIE is a commercially available game developed by Nomada Studios, and it's a platformer adventure game which follows the journey of a hopeful young girl as she experiences the various emotions associated with losing someone. So she's experiencing a certain kind of unnamed loss, which is not been explicitly mentioned in the game. The game is completely visual. There are absolutely no words. It is completely evocative and hinged on using visual art, sound, music, and symbols to communicate the particular emotions of the girl. The same game has been used in two vastly different thematic areas. So one of complicated grief and the other of art appreciation. So Vignesh will now be talking about how the the process of creating such a game-based course works, while using the one that we've developed on art appreciation. So, but before that, let's just watch a trailer of the game to see what it is all about. And so we are all on the same page before we begin. Okay, Vignesh, over to you.
Thank you, Anuradhi. So, over the past several minutes, we've gone over the philosophy of play and understood the importance and relevance of social emotional learning and how it relates to video games. Now we come to the critical question: what is a game-based course? So, a game-based course at MGIEP um, is it leverages the narrative of a video game. So in a game-based course, the video game is the text. So let's look at a comparison with a conventional course. So in a conventional course, Anurati, can we have the next slide? In a conventional course, say you are a teacher of history or sciences, you have a textbook with several chapters in it, and this defines your curriculum for the semester or for the year. And you as a teacher might design several classroom activities and homework activities, have group discussions within the class to assist the student to learn better. So in the game-based course, the video game is your textbook, and all of your activities and discussions are part of the game-based course. When we design game-based courses, this is hosted on our learning management system called Framerspace. These online activities are a substitute for the classroom homework activities that you might have for students. And these online discussions are facilitated by you as the teacher with your students. Now, due to the first person nature of the video game, the learner is exposed to a variety of scenarios, and you can sort of assess their actions and their behavior and their motivations when they solve these social dilemmas or situational problems. As an educator, this is very valuable. Apart from that, a game-based course helps to reinforce the knowledge that a learner might pick up within the game. So they are learning things within the game world, but unless you pull them out of that environment and explicitly reinforce these learning outcomes, that they might be lost. So this is why we encourage game-based. We think we need game-based courses to accompany a video game. Let's go on to how to design a game-based course now. So we've designed a 4-step process on how to go about designing a game-based course. We'll touch upon all of the 4 steps individually, but briefly, all of it is explained more in detail within the 3rd module of the Educator's Toolkit. So you can go through it at your own time. So the first step is the selection of the game. So when you play a game as an educator, certain themes in the game might stand out, and you might think, okay, this game does something very well. So what we do here is we encourage that the educator break down these themes into 2 broad categories. One is the knowledge that the game sort of imparts to the learner just based on the context or the narrative of the game. And the other is the social emotional competencies. We use the ESC Square framework. So when we evaluate a game, we look at what sort of SEL skills can the game be used to teach. Is it empathy or mindfulness or compassion or critical inquiry? So if you are new to this this sort of field, what we've done is we've collated several resources with lists of games created by us and by other very nice people on the internet. You can start with those games and see which ones speak to you. The second step is identifying the learning outcomes. So these learning outcomes are, you need to confirm. There might be certain things that you think the game is good at teaching, but as an educator, we highly encourage that you have co-design workshops with at least 5 people who are in the same sort of group as your intended target audience. Here, we do this because these learning outcomes are socially and culturally different for different contexts. So we've created a little guide that will help you. It's a checklist with questions and how to best organize these sessions. The co-design workshop that's something that we've done in the past at the institute. And with a set of guidelines and checklists, you can have interesting group discussions and verify that whatever learning outcomes you observed in the game are what is being observed by your target group. Now, once this is done, the third step is to identify the pause points. Now, these pause points are basically points of inflection where you pull the user from the game into the game-based course. So it allows the learner to reflect on certain scenarios or experiences that they may have experienced in the game, have a dialogue about it with their peers, and share perspectives about these experiences with another who's also engaged in the game. The objective here with pause points is that we need to indulge the learner in explicit learning experiences that reinforce what has been taught within the game. So it's important that when you design and when you identify these pause points, you also keep in mind the pacing of your entire cohort. You see how fast everyone else plays the game and find interesting points which can lead to interesting discussions and some learning through peer learning. The final step is the integration of instructional activities. Now, there are many different sort of digital pedagogies that are innovative and immersive. At the Institute, we use Libre that was designed in-house. Libre is a digital pedagogy that advises that every online activity have at least one of three main components. The activity should either have reflection, or it should encourage the learner to inquire more deeply or engage in dialogue with their peer. So when we design the game-based course on GRIE, the trailer that you just watched, we had to go through this entire step, and I will now show you one of the activities and how this might translate to. I'm sorry, I lost the slides. Reshma, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So looks like Vignesh Anurati just dropped out, and
Okay, no
she's
problem.
joining back in. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
share
I'm
my.
sorry. I think my internet just went off.
No problem.
No
Can
problem.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, looks all good.
Okay. Okay. So when we designed this course, when we played the game first, GRIE, you might have noticed that in the trailer there was absolutely no voiceover. In the entire game, there are no dialogues. All of the experiences, everything in the narrative is conveyed purely by the use of music and brilliant visuals. It's like a moving watercolor painting. So we first had the idea to use this game to teach art appreciation. And art appreciation is a brilliant way to build empathy and critical thinking skills in learners. So we designed a course called Perception and Interpretation based on GRIE. And this was a 3-module course. So in the first module, we have the students, we prime the students, the learners, to have a critical view of art, just be more open to different perspectives on art, be naturally more curious about it. In the second module, we give them the tools of analysis. So the formal analysis where you describe objectively what is seen on the canvas, or in this case, in the game, in a scene of the game. And the contextual analysis where you sort of understand what emotions it invokes in you. These are basic tools of art appreciation that were covered in the second module. I'll share something from the third module now, where we put it all together and then we have the students apply these skills that they learned to scenes from the game. So very early on in the game, on the top left that you see is a scene from one of the early levels. And we have 3 different activities that engage 3 different kinds of critical thinking skills in students: reflection and critical thinking. So here you see that the entire screen goes red. and there's a certain animation to the main character as well. So the first is a perspective taking sort of activity right below the clip that you see. We ask the learner, according to you, what emotion do you think is being experienced by the girl in the clip above? So they need to take visual cues and understand. They need to put themselves in the girl's shoes and try to figure out what she must be going through. There's a bit of, then we go on to the formal analysis on the top right here, where we ask the learner to describe objectively the shapes and the colors and the forms that are being seen in the scene. So this is to link the colors and sort of understand what is just objectively visual, the textures and the shapes. The third is a more reflective activity where the learner is asked to think about the sort of emotions the clip invokes in them. These are generally textual exercises. It can also be done with a group, a small cohort of your own students. But these are some of the examples of the kind of activities that you could design from pause points that you identify in the game. GRIE perception and interpretation is also available for anyone to use on Framerspace. You can check that out. And with the 4 steps, I hope, oops, that's the wrong slide. With the 4 steps, I hope you have sort of gotten an idea of a broad overview of how these courses are designed. And each of these steps is explained more in detail in the toolkit. Please go check it out. We have a lot of resources as well. So thank you. Anurathy, would you?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think we are ready to take any questions. Also, just to reiterate the fact that this Games for Learning Educators Toolkit is openly accessible, and you can register on our learning platform. So MGIEP has its own learning platform called framerspace.com, and wherein you can see and register on the course and see more such resources and tools and practices and techniques that can help you use games for learning in the classroom. And yeah, so we're happy to take any questions.
Anurathy, we'll probably also have a longer workshops in the future. We've already seen some interest in the Educators Toolkit. So if you've registered using the form, we'll be shooting out emails informing you of what we have in store through this year. Georgia has a question. Are these games for learning meant for children from 10 to 12 years old? Anurathy?
So most of the games that we have used for the game-based courses that we have designed, so we've designed about 4 till now, and most of them are for adolescents. So mostly 13 and above or 16 and above. So we design them according to the thematic area that we choose. For example, when we were using GRIE for art appreciation, we designed the age bracket as 16 and above. Whereas when we were using GRIE to define learning outcomes on grief education, which is a slightly more serious and a slightly more advanced topic when it comes to the SEL field. So the age group there is about 18 and above. So we define the age groups according to the theme that we choose and the knowledge competencies that we have in mind.
Oh, we have another question from Raksha. Wouldn't gaming be an addiction for teenager if it's in their all classes and all subjects? A cheeky answer would be, wouldn't you want your students to be addicted to learning? But to be serious, this has more to do with the psychology of the individual and the sort of social circumstances that they grew up in. And there have been, so this was 2000s and early 2010s when this was sort of the thing. And also I do agree there are unethical practices that games have. So we consciously choose games that do not sort of hijack the psyche of the human brain. and get them hooked onto bad, addictive sort of behaviors. There are quite a few conscious game design studios that do an incredible job. And I forget my last point. Let me just go back to the question. Um, yeah, so overall, I think it's the pacing, and a lot has to be researched about how the child reacts to such things. Are they coping with some other issues in their life? Are they using games as escapism? It's up to the teacher to facilitate this, and if it's done well, I think it's a risk worth taking for the sort of rewards you get, much like play.
I would also like to add to that just the fact that, of course, yes, that there are games that might have, say, adverse effects of addiction, but also on the other hand, there are independent game developers and other game developers who are coming on board and have the same intentions as educators to make children more kind-hearted and compassionate. In fact, we had a workshop with game developers last year and we got the same responses. So they are also working to create more such story-based games that have a strong focus on emotions, the emotional narrative, the emotional journey of an individual. And there are all sorts of games, and we can definitely pick the ones that we want our children to play. So yeah.
There's another question from Vanessa. I'm interested in having students use the games and then using game analytics to see how students are coping. Is this possible? Well, this is the ideal space, right? You want the game to do the assessment within the game. And right now, we are not there in terms of game design, which is why we do the job of creating good courses and doing the assessment outside of the game. I'm not sure if there might be educational games that do this, but none of the games that we use, we don't have access to the backend data of how the student plays the game. But we would love to have it, but it's currently not possible. Did I miss anything there?
The fact is that yes, we do it separately for the same reason as Vignesh mentioned, and to assess whether students are coping or not, we use pre and post assessments to see whether there is any change in SEL competencies. So we have certain scales for empathy, mindfulness, compassion that we use here at the institute to see whether there is a change from the baseline data before the child played either the game or took even the course, and whether after the game-based course has there been any such change. So we are currently doing such a research study on Bury Me My Love. Vignesh, would you like to talk about it? Just some of the details if you would like to give to the audience.
Yeah, so last year we ran a study with 600 students to see how much the game-based course impacts their learning of social emotional skills. Well, as a teaser, we see some interesting results, and we'll be publishing this paper soon. We'll share it on the website, and if you are part of the newsletter, you will hear about it in more detail. Anurati, do you want to take this question? Bhavya asks, I would love to know more about how an overall assessment of learning outcomes is done.
Okay, overall assessment of learning outcomes, I think we define it separately for knowledge-based learning outcomes and SEL-based learning outcomes. So for SEL right now, the assessment that we do is the pre and post assessment that we mentioned. But for knowledge-based learning outcomes, we do of course have those skills, but we are also developing scenario-based assessments that are a part of the course itself, to assess whether some of the concepts that we are trying to teach to the students, whether they be on migration or democracy or grief or all of that, are being inculcated within the learner. So that is the way that we go about it. And this is why creating the game-based course is so crucial, because with just using the game, a lot of the information is not explicitly mentioned. For example, like in grief, when we say that she's undergoing or she's experiencing grief, there is no explicit mention of why, or we cannot capture the data of whether the user is actually able to put himself or herself or themselves within the shoes of the protagonist at all. So this is why just creating a game-based course and forming intelligent questions to understand where the user is at is such a crucial step.
There's another question. Can we take more questions, Reshma?
Oh yeah, sure. I just had a question pop up in my mind because I see a lot of teachers also asking these questions that you have beautiful games that focus on SEL and then game-based learning. There are questions regarding that. Do you also help teachers learn those games themselves first before they put it out in front of the student and try to see the change in the child within that particular day or a month or a week? Are there any training sessions to help teachers understand?
Yeah, so we'd love to have more teachers participate in the course and sort of understand this better. So we're open to doing specifically about training the games itself. That is something that we'd like the teachers to do on their own, but we are always there for support. But we'd love to organize more workshops to have more teachers. If someone I see, P. Bora, mentioned that they would like to train their teachers or tell us ways to do that, we are available for that. If you contact us on the email on the it's gamesforlearning@unesco.org. We'd love to organize a session for you, and perhaps even you could then train more teachers yourself if you think you're confident enough.
That sounds perfect. Yes, please go on. We have 7 minutes, so we can take up more questions.
There's a question about technological. Is there a curriculum for teenagers for technological aspects? Anuradhi?
I don't see that question. Which one are you talking about?
But Badri Narayana has asked, is there any curriculum for teenagers for technological aspects? I think you're speaking more about STEM subjects, and yeah, that's the question.
Okay. So I guess technological aspects is that I'm not
Probably
sure what
STEM
that
and
means.
engineering
So
and coding.
yeah. So if I mean, of course, like the whole field is open with game-based courses. The good part is that you can pick the kind of game that you want to choose. So there are games out there in the market that specifically focus on STEM, or say the protagonist wants to be this technological wizard of sorts, and how can you help him or her rise to the top. So you can choose such games. I don't have any idea of whether there's any existing curriculum, but with the game-based educators toolkit, you will have the right tools and the practices in mind, with the entire process laid out for you. For example, that if I want to use a game, where are the places that I can look for? What are the resources that I can use? What are the correct ways to facilitate game-based courses? So that's what the course that we have developed intends to do, so that you can choose the kind of knowledge component that you want to focus on.
Vanessa has another interesting point about there are no big data sets that allow us to see how students are emotionally coping with the pandemic. This would be a great area to explore. I do agree. This would be a good area to explore. Sort of outside the scope of the Games for Learning team at MGIEP, but I hope someone takes this up. We'd love to have that data.
Yeah. Do you see any other question, Vignesh, here?
Please let us know about the course toolkit, how to sign up, and benefits of completing the course.
Okay, so
go ahead, Anuradhi.
Yeah, so the link has been shared both on chat, and I think it would be there on the YouTube description as well. So you can freely register on the course, and all the benefits of taking the course are, of course, within the homepage of the course. But to put it simply, if you are an educator who is enthusiastic about using games in the classroom, and if you think that anyway kids are distracted by games, why not use games for good, so that they are excited by the prospect of using games and then making them learn. So some sort of a stealth, stealth training upon and moving upon your learners. But I think for anyone who out there who wants to do such a thing, it's a great course to take, and it is only 16 hours long. So it's a self-paced course, so you can take it at your own time and pace.
So, Anuruti, I see a question that audience wants to know that are all the courses free in there?
Yeah. So it's a UNESCO, so we're not motivated by money, and all of it is available freely, and you just have to register on the platform, which is completely GDPR compliant. So we are also not using your data to do anything. We don't get access to any of your data. So yeah.
So another question is that do the games are for SEL or they are subject based?
So the games themselves might have little components of both. So for example, it might just be so for example, if I just use GRIE as an example, the subject matter, it's a story of an individual, of a protagonist, and we're following her, and there are of course emotions associated with it. And just like you would use a textbook to kind of extrapolate certain other narratives that are mentioned but not explicitly explained or discussed, you can use, say for example, notions of empathy, compassion, how they interplay, as well as say choose a knowledge area of art appreciation, or a knowledge area of, say, grief education. There are more such games. For example, MGIEP created its own game called World Rescue, which was a game on sustainability. And the game-based course combines both SEL competencies as well as knowledge competencies on what sustainability is like, and all the knowledge competencies associated with that.
There's another question by Subhasini. Do you have any game related to computer science topics for better understanding the concepts? MGIP has not designed anything on computer science, but just as a resource, if you check out Minecraft EDU, they do an excellent job of teaching coding from the very conceptual level, and you can build things out of logic within the game. So, and you have lesson plans, curriculum designed and ready to use in your classroom. Maybe that's something you'd like to explore. We've mentioned a few of such other games also within the first module of the toolkit, and there are resources that tell you about various other games. Our focus is mostly on global citizenship and social emotional learning. So that's what we do best.
And I would just like to add, because Google also has CS First, that is one of the Google's new initiative, which has teaching computer science to every school child. So their motive is CS First is free from Google, and that can be used by any teacher. They already have a lot of lesson plans just to introduce computer science coding based on games like learning. So I think that can be one of another resource to add to Minecraft. Minecraft is great too. So I see a lot of educators are really excited about what you showed, and I was just blown away by the concept that you said, EMC Square. Like, I was just trying to put up those words together, and I just said, oh, E is equal to MC Square. No, it is EMC Squared. And it was amazing concept. I have shared all the links that contained information about your platform, and educators, please go ahead, check those sites out, contact Anurati, Vignesh with any of the questions. All the details are in the YouTube description. And as a global platform, we are always here to bring you up with such amazing amazing people who teach us, and we learn from them. So thank you so much, Vignesh and Anurati. It was a great session. I had never heard about anything like this that you just showed. So half of the time I was just like blown away and watching what exactly it is. So a beautiful concept, and thank you so much for presenting with us. And we would really love to see and attend the workshops that you do for teachers, because I see a lot of audience even asking that you should combine it with the government schools. You should do it with CBSE and the other schools where teachers are really keen to learn all these things, because the way education system is going to change coming further. I think this is much needed. And as we spoke about things after pandemic, and that's a great point to be considered. So from Global, I thank all of you, everybody from the audience, to be so active in asking questions, chatting, giving ideas to each other. Please feel free to give us your feedback, and I will post the feedback link in the chat as well. And thank you so much, Anurati and Vignesh, and we love to have you on Global GEG.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much,
much,
Reshma. It was a
Reshma. I
pleasure.
think it was a great opportunity to be with you and all the the exciting community. I've never had such an engaged audience right from the beginning to the very end, and it was a huge pleasure to be a part of this. So I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we look forward to learning from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Bye bye. Stay in touch.